Good day, everyone. How are you feeling today? I hope we're all feeling great despite the things that are happening right now and, of course, the individual challenges we are facing in our lives. By the way, I'm Jenica Marie Ibiza, and together with my co-reporters Kat Silvania, we will be discussing about teaching students with intellectual disability. So, what comes up in your mind when you hear the word intellectual disability? Maybe some of you question, is there such a thing as intellectual disability? Or maybe some of you have a little knowledge about it already. But before we discuss about it, I would like first to give a little inspiration to everyone because I do believe that each and every day we really need an inspiration or a little spark to push our day through or for our day to be great. I have here a quote which says, your present circumstances don't determine where you can go, they merely determine where you start, by Nidhi Kubin. So some of us, especially when we are experiencing a downfall or we are on our darkest moment in our lives, we tend to lose hope. We are more likely to be stuck there thinking there's nothing we can do about it. But according to Nidhi Kubin, they merely determine where you start. So whatever or wherever phase we are right now in our lives, we always remember that it's just a startup for a long and amazing journey ahead of us. And no matter how long that journey is, no matter how hard it is, in the end, we will always win. So I hope you feel inspired about it. So to start with our proper discussion, I have here the objectives, which are to define intellectual disability, identify students with intellectual disability, recognize the characteristics of students with intellectual disability, classification of students with intellectual disability, classroom accommodation and modifications, and teaching strategies for students with intellectual disability. So what is intellectual disability? Intellectual disability, or ID, is a term used when a person has certain limitations in cognitive functioning and skills, including communication, social, and self-care skills. These limitations can cause a child to develop and learn more slowly or differently than a typically developing child. Intellectual disability can happen anytime before a child turns 18 years old or even before birth. So intellectual disability is the most common developmental disability, and it is formerly known as mental retardation. However, it should be noted that the term mental retardation is still widely used within education and government agency. However, many advocacy feel that this label has too many negative connotations. That's why the newer terms intellectual disability or developmental disability are becoming far more accepted and prevalent in the field. There are levels of intellectual disability, which vary greatly in children. Children with intellectual disability might have a hard time letting others know their wants and needs and taking care of themselves. It could take longer for a child with intellectual disability to learn to speak, walk, dress, or eat without help, and they could have trouble learning in school. So let's move on to how does an intellectual disability happen. Intellectual disability, formerly known as mental retardation, can be caused by injury, disease, or a problem in the brain. For many children, the cause of their intellectual disability is unknown. Some causes of intellectual disability, such as Down syndrome, fetal alcohol syndrome, Fragile X syndrome, birth defects, and infections, can happen before birth. Some happen while a baby is being born or soon after birth. However, other causes of intellectual disability does not occur until the child is older. This might include severe head injury, infections, stroke, or other serious health problem, in which that intellectual disability is not an inherent trait of any individual, but instead it is characterized by a combination of deficits in both cognitive functioning and adaptive behavior, which is the child is having a hard time adapting to the reality or to its surrounding. There is severity of the intellectual disability, and it is determined by the discrepancy between the individual's capabilities in learning and in the expectations of the social environment. Here are the common causes of an intellectual disability. Genetic conditions. Sometimes an intellectual disability is caused by abnormal genes inherited from parents, errors when genes combined, or other reasons. Examples of genetic conditions are Down syndrome or Fragile X syndrome. Another common cause is problems during pregnancy. An intellectual disability can result when the baby does not develop inside the mother properly. For example, there may be a problem with the way the baby's cells divide. A woman who drinks alcohol or gets an infection like rubella, which is a contagious viral disease which can cause fetal malformation if contracted early in pregnancy, may also have a baby with an intellectual disability. Problems at birth. If there are complications during labor and birth, such as a baby not getting enough oxygen, he or she may have an intellectual disability. Lastly is health problems. Diseases like whooping cough, the measles, or meningitis can cause intellectual disabilities. They can also be caused by extreme malnutrition, not getting appropriate medical care, or by being exposed to poisons like lead or mercury. According to the American Association of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, an individual has intellectual disability if he or she meets three criteria, and these are the following criteria. IQ is below 70 to 75, which is very low. There are significant limitations in two or more adaptive areas, which the skills that are needed to live, work, and play in the community, such as communication or self-care. And the condition manifests itself before the age of 18. So if a child meets these three criteria, he or she may have an intellectual disability. Characteristics of students with intellectual disability. Academic performance. Students identified with intellectual disabilities fail to keep up the grade level of peers in developing academic skills. These students are slow in learning to read, slow in learning basic math skills, delayed language skills, which also affect other academic areas such as writing, spelling, and science. Cognitive performance. Cognitive performance covers three aspects such as attention, memory, and generalization. Attention. Students have difficulty in attending, such as they should be orienting to a task, means they should focus on the direction of the task, whereas they should have selective attention, means that they should only focus on the relative task, not on an important task. And sustained attention means that continue the task for the period of time. But students with intellectual difficulties or intellectual disabilities can't attain to these attentions. Memory. These students or students with intellectual disability also have difficulty remembering the information. For example, they may have problems remembering the math facts or spellings, or if they remember this kind of information for one day, they may forget it for the next day. Generalization. This is the final area in which students with intellectual disabilities may have difficulty to generalize the information to other material or settings. For example, he may learn a new word in one subject area, but in learning the same word in another subject, he may have difficulty in it. Social skills performance. The cognitive characteristics of students with intellectual disabilities can also cause difficulty interacting socially. For example, a low level of cognitive development and slow language development can cause a student to have a problem in understanding verbal communications and expectations. Likewise, difficulty in attention and difficulty with memory can also affect the social interactions of students in such a way that he may not be able to attend the important parts of social interactions, maintaining attention and holding important things which they observe in their short-term memory. So in other words, intellectual students with intellectual disabilities have trouble thinking logically or have trouble understanding social rules and in interacting in the society. These are the other characteristics of children with intellectual disability. They sit up, crawl, or walk later than other children, learn to talk later or have trouble speaking, and have trouble seeing the consequences of their actions. Now that we all know intellectual disability is not a contagious disease, you cannot catch an intellectual disability from anyone else. We also know it's not a type of mental illness like depression. There are no cures for intellectual disability. However, children with intellectual disabilities can learn to do many things. They may just need to take more time or learn differently than other children.
Intellectual functioning is the way and speed in which a person's brain works. So, intellectual functioning is the way that the person's brain works through the process. Delays in intellectual functioning involve several areas of development because the brain was in charge of everything in our body, including growth and our behavior. Intellectual aptitude is essential because it enables the person to think, problem solve, and reason on other board. Teaching strategies. So this is the teaching strategy to to the to the students with intellectual disability. Number one, teach one notion or activity component at a time. Teach one at the time to help enhance memorization and sequencing. Teach students in a small groups or one by one as possible. Number four, always furnish numerous opportunity to practice skills in a number of different settings. Number five, help students to a certain guidelines. So this is the teaching strategies. Disability does not mean inability because it doesn't disable the whole pictures of a person who have disability. There are 8 steps that are characteristic of good teaching. Number one is clarify. The student must know exactly what to do. For example, add no doubt what is expected. Number two, levels. The student must be able to do the task with high status of accuracy, but the task should be challenging. For example, the student should be able to get at least 80% correct, but not to achieve 100 correct frequently, because we do not force the student of his limit. Opportunities. Number three, the student must have the systematic opportunity to feedback. For example, we actively engage in the task high percentage of the time. Number four, consequence. The student must obtain a meaningful reward for correct performance. Example, the consequence of correct performance must be frequent and perceived as desirable by the student. Number five, sequence. The task must be in logical sequence so that the students get the big idea. For example, steps must be presented learning so the knowledge or skills is made on a logical progression or framework of ideas with a system curriculum. Number six, relevance. The task must be relevant to the student's life and, if possible, the student understands and how, why it is valuable. For example, the teacher attempts to help the students see why the task is essential in the culture. Application. The teacher assists the students learn how to learn and remember by enlightening memory and learning skills strategies and applying knowledge and skills to everybody's problem. For example, teacher generalization not just isolated and honors the students' culture. 8. Monitoring. The teacher continuously monitors the student's progress and always now can show what student has mastered and thus place or a label in a curriculum or sequence of tasks. For example, the teacher must follow up the status of the students in academic performance. Autism is not a disability, it's a new ability because not all autism cannot cannot do anything because their autism are smarter and other beautiful pictures that not everyone can do. How the teacher help a child with intellectual disability. For students with an intellectual disability, breaking down every learning task into small, easy to digest steps may be invaluable. Teachers can modify their parents' curriculum through introducing each learning task as a chain of short individual movements rather than looking at the bigger picture. Supporting your students in the classroom. Stay organized because the student must be organized in order for them to build and to learn, to create a learning environment so that they can do anything, to have more sense. Don't reinvent the wheel. The IEP is designed to provide a template of the way to assess the student, so there must be clear goal or classroom accommodation already written for teachers to follow, just like the protocols that the teacher should follow in order to be successful. Know that your student is unique. Do not compare your student to other one because all students are unique in different form of ways that others cannot do. For example, ability to perform and ability to compute, which others cannot do easily. Keep instructions simple. If students struggle to stay focused or absorb lots of information at once, try to break things into smaller tasks that feel more achievable and allow them to sense like they're accomplishing things during the days. So make the instructions simple in order for the students to achieve more in a day to learn about something else. Embrace advocacy. Reasonable classroom size times for composing and documentation is crucial when you have students with special needs in your classroom. Create opportunity for success. Students with special needs can obtain expensive like they struggle to success or create opportunity for them to upgrade and reduce their accomplishment. Don't feel pressure to be perfect. Be patient on yourself and the students you will be both make mistakes and learn from them along the way. So you and the students will continue learning until to make your things work and to be done by learning to each other and to correct it. Lean on others. This is particularly crucial in online school where the teacher and students don't have the broad advantage of daily contact while passing in the walls. So communication should be open so that learning will continue to grow to the students with intellectual disability can learn well. So that is all for today. Have a good day, everyone, and thank you for listening.